Good morning. Let me tell you something. I questioned my sanity when I was walking out of the car and it said 0 degrees. Why would we leave a perfectly warm vehicle when it's 0 degrees out here? Yeah, you know, it's crazy. Anyway, let me tell you, I've been working on this for a couple of weeks. The idea behind, really I want to illustrate to you, my viewers, and to my students in the classroom that I get asked a lot of times about bracketing and filters and one over the other, why is it necessary? So I decided this morning really to come and find a spot where I could showcase the a situation where I had drastic highlights and shadows, and we definitely have that. We have the sun, we're at sunrise here on Lake Coeur d'Alene, somewhere near the Rose Lake area. What I have is I have a little foreground interest right here, log. I have the crack in the ice, and the sun's going to basically set right directly, or rise directly in front of me. So I'm going to take 2 shots this morning to kind of illustrate this and to see if there really is a difference. I can tell you that for those of you that don't know what bracketing is, it's basically taking multiple images, taking them at the extreme underexposed and extremely overexposed, combining them all. I have my camera in here set to 7 exposures, so it's going to take 7 shots, and then in Lightroom, and which I will show you the process of in Lightroom, we just basically blend those and create you know, an HDR without making it too HDR looking. It allows us to capture those massive highlights and capture these and the shadows all in the same image. So I'm going to take 2 this morning. I'm going to do 1 bracketed, and the second one I'm going to throw on a graduated neutral density filter. It is a 3-stop grad soft edge, and I will take 1 photo with that, and we'll compare and contrast the difference and see in a situation like this if you really do need that kind of filter. This first shot this morning is really about showing you whether or not this works. So this morning I have my, this is my 3-stop neutral density grad, and all right, I have this ready to throw on real quickly. And so we can do both of these, do this experiment. Here we go. There it is. Beauty. Off the 7 shots, now for the ND filter. Okay, 1 shot. So as the sun has come up, you can see how bright that is. The shots will be just slightly different because the sun came up pretty fast as it crests that peak. But, you know, after reviewing the pictures on here, they both look really good. And you know, I can't say at this point whether to use one or the other. We'll see. We'll see when I get on the computer, but to be honest with you, I think really, without seeing anything, I think both have a useful place. It's always good to keep on your bag. You just never know. So what I'm going to do now is just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm going to show you some drone footage. right, I really hope you enjoyed the drone footage as well as the morning as much as I've been enjoying it. What I really want to do right now before I get you into the computer and show you some of these images, I want to take you out to a place that I shot a couple, 2 weeks ago about when I started coming up with this idea of trying to test the difference between bracketing and graduated neutral density filters. I basically drove up to a place called Fernand Saddle and looked for a high contrast situation similar to this morning to try to illustrate or try to kind of test the parameters of one over the other. What I would like to do is just really quickly take you out to that so that you have an idea and you can see what the conditions I was dealing with that day, and then you'll see those final images as well when I take you into the computer. So let me take you there now. 3-stop graduated filter, and I'm focused on the tree here, and I'm going to take it out of bracket mode. And 2-second timer, and I'm going to take the image. So I love the neutral density. For me, in situations like this, I probably wouldn't pull it out. I'd probably just bracket the image. However, in situations where I might be down on the lake and I want to do a long exposure, really smooth that water out, to bracket and do a long exposure can be a real problem, as you may have, well, let's say your exposure times are 1 minute to 5 on the 5th exposure. You got to take 5 different exposures at over a minute each. By the time you're done taking those pictures, your light will have changed dramatically. So for me, that's not the best option if you're taking a long exposure. So if I have my neutral density filter in here and I know I'm going to take a long exposure, that's what I'm going to for sure put this in, because I don't really want to bracket the images. That way I'm just taking one shot. But in situations like this, I don't find that it's super necessary to throw this on all the time, because I can just quickly switch bracket mode, pop it into the exposure bracketing, and off we go. So right now I would like to take you back into the office and show you exactly what these images, the difference. Can we see a difference between them? Maybe not. I don't really know, but we'll find out when we get back to the office. So I'll take you back there now. All right, before I get into editing this, I want to just make one last point. If you really want to use a graduated neutral density filter, another great opportunity for that is when you shoot a panorama. So rather than shooting 5 brackets in 10 different shots in a pano, equaling 50 different shots, you can shoot 1 image for each one of those 10 shots by bringing down the highlights with that filter. Now, I've done both of those, and I will tell you that shooting it with the 1 image is a lot easier in the editing process than having to try to manipulate all those different files. So definitely a headache, and what you're going to get in the end is a similar result. But let's pick up where we left off, where I left off on the video on Fernand Saddle, and take a look at those 2 images that I shot. So now that we're here in the computer, this first image is the image that I shot using the filter, and you can see it did a really good job. I've already edited this picture for time's sake. It's nice. Shadows are nice. The highlights, the detail in the sky is really good. So it did a good job with the filter. Now let's take a look at the bracketed image. This was a 5 bracket image. You can see it's very similar editing. The difference is there's definitely more detail in the sky. I even think that I like the sun star a little bit better here. Now, that's to be expected a little bit because, and it's only slightly, it's maybe hard for you guys to see, but here it looks better. It's because it's not going through that extra piece of glass. But it's really nice here as well as here, but just I think if I was to choose a winner out of these 2 images, I would choose definitely the bracketed image, as I think that it, we can take a look at the two images together. You can see them side by side, that the details in the clouds, although they're very similar, there's just more detail in here. This tends to start to lose some in here, especially in this part of the cloud. So winner goes to the bracket. Now, let's go back here. So now let's go out to this morning's images, and I want to keep you in mind that the shooting conditions were slightly different. So let's go ahead and take a look. What I've done here is this red one is, as you can see by the file name, is the HDR. So on the HDR, I have not edited it. What we're going to do is we're just going to do a real quick edit, and I'm going to push the extremes on this. I'm going to drop the highlights in the sky to bring back some detail, and I'm going to boost the shadows. Like I said, this is the 5-image bracket. Okay? And I'm going to, you can see my histogram up top, right? I'm trying not to clip any of these shadows. And then the blacks, I'm going to do the same on, and I'm just going to up my exposure just slightly to give it a little bit more brightness. Now I'm not going to add in contrast or anything. I'm just interested in this to see how it deals with my shadows, which were in this area, and the highlights up in here, and obviously down even here on the reflection on the ice, and even here on the snow. So I think that the bracketed image did a pretty good job. I have some room here, both sides of my histogram for editing. Really good overall, a really good job. Now let's take a look at the single image. So on the single image, let's do the same thing. Let's drop our highlights and our shadows 100%. And you can see with that, we're still it's a little darker, even though the sun had come up. It's overall, the image is a little darker. Even though the snow here is a little brighter, there was a little bit more brightness in the sky. That's interesting to me. Now let's just move the whites just a little bit, and let's move the black so we're not clipping anything. And then let's just pump our exposure just like we done the last one a little bit to the point where we're not clipping. Okay, somewhere about there. And we're pretty good. The blues look about right there, and the blues on this one are pretty similar. So let's take a look. We have, this is bracket versus neutral density filter, and we can see maybe one detail here. We have a little bit of a lens flare going on from that extra piece of glass on the front of the camera, and even over in here we're starting to see a little bit of that. Now, you know, typically we don't shoot directly into the sun with neutral density, graduated neutral density filters, but you can, and sometimes it handles it pretty well, and in this sense it handled it pretty well overall. So here's with the bracket again. And let's take a look. Let's look at these side by side. So this is my filtered, and this is the bracket. And you know, they're just maybe 30 seconds apart in the image, but you can see they've been edited similarly. This one's got a little bit more darker tone. We could fix that. This one, the sky is still a little bit more blown out versus the filtered image. But I think that we could deal with that in post. I don't know if I was to pick a winner on these two images. I would probably call it a tie. I think that they're real close. I think that if I was going to go with ease of use, obviously the bracket is easier, but not necessarily better, as you can see from the sky. Even, well, I think the Sunstar is maybe slightly better on the bracketed, but that had to do with that I shot it earlier. So anyway, I think that that one is a tie. Now let's go to a couple other images. I want to show you a morning that I went out to shoot another vlog, and I went onto Lake Pend Oreille for sunrise, and we couldn't get to where we wanted to go, so we ended up just driving around and searching for some images. So I did shoot some video, and this is the video of me shooting the old barn, and then I shot some video of the lake as well. and the morning was absolutely freezing, and by the time we got to the lake, it was 0 degrees and absolutely frigid. And the sun started to come up and created really bright, harsh situation. So in that situation, I'll show you the first image that I took that morning. I took, let's come back to the single image I took of this barn. And this particular image is one single image using a graduated neutral density filter, the same 3-stop that I used this morning. So you can see that that's really good. It did a good job. I didn't really, I threw the filter on there. I just wanted to see how it handled it, and I think that it really did a fabulous job, even directly into the sun, no flaring, really nice. I think that if I had bracketed it, I would have got something very similar to this. Then the next image I shot that morning was this image, and this was down on the water, and you can see that this image, I actually bracketed this image, and it was a 5-image bracket, and I was able to get this. I saw this happening up in the sky, and I didn't want it to go away if I threw a filter on, so I just bracketed it real quick. And it did a real good job. Didn't bring out a lot of detail here, but that was because the lighting was so harsh that morning. It was brutal that I really think I had no choice going into the sun. I had to bracket this one. So it really did a nice job. And then the last image I shot that morning was this image of these 4 lonely chairs in this very, very frozen morning. And this was with my filter, not bracketed. And the filter really did a good job of adding a little bit of drama to the sky, bringing down those tones and allowing me to have a little bit more detail out here. So to kind of close with this whole story today, I think that for me personally, most of the time I'm just going to continue to default to the bracket. However, I certainly will use the graduated filters when I feel that that's necessary, especially if I'm shooting a long exposure or if I'm shooting a panorama. I think that those are times where it becomes very, very useful to throw a filter, a graduated neutral density filter, onto the end of your camera. But other times, I think that our cameras do such a good job nowadays, and the editing process has improved so much over the years that we don't get those real weird looking HDR images as much as we used to. And so and I think you can avoid that in the editing process as well. So is there a clear winner? No, not really. I think both have their purpose. I think that both are very useful. I think that it's definitely easier just to switch your drive mode to bracket and fire off 5-7 images. So with that being said, I want to leave you with some drone footage at the end of this video today of my morning on Lake Ponderay when I shot those 2 really frozen images. So I will end the video today with that, but before I do that, let me send you back out to the lake so I can close it out there. Thanks, Kevin, for coming out with me this morning. And
yeah, absolutely, thanks for having me.
You brought us Fuji as well.
I did.
And so it's a Fuji morning out on a very frozen lake in northern Idaho. If you like the content today, make sure that you hit that thumbs up, and if you continue to like my stuff, make sure that if you want to see more, because I have a lot more in the works, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and I will definitely see you on the next one.